Hardy Construction.
What's up, everybody? It's the Hardy Construction. You can find us at hardyconstruction.tumblr.com, youtube.com/hardyconstruction, as well as facebook.com/the Hardy Construction. I'm your host, Alex, as well as...
Egg Drop Soup.
Today's film is...
Ichi the Killer.
Ichi the Killer is a 2001 film directed by Takashi Miike. It's about a sadomasochistic Yakuza enforcer whose name...
Sadomasochistic.
I was trying to be fancy. Named Kakihara searches for his missing boss as he comes across Ichi, a repressed and psychotic killer who may be able to inflict levels of pain that Kakihara has only dreamed of. Written by Sakichi Sato, based on the comic book by Hideo Yamamoto. So it's called Korishiya 1 in Japan, which means number one killer, but also means Ichi. Ichi is 1 in Japanese. So
okay.
This is for Takashi Miike month.
Oh, that explains the 1 on his clothes too.
Yes. This is for Takashi Miike month, so all September we'll be dealing with Takashi Miike films that are in the horror, or slanted towards horror, but whatever. So Ichi the Killer came out in 2001. Danny, what's your history with this movie?
I've seen like bits and pieces of it. Like there were little scenes I recognized, but I've never seen the full thing. And I'm glad I watched it. It's really good.
Oh, good.
But I don't quite understand a lot of stuff.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. My history is that I remember I used to go around. There's a website called AintItCool.com, which is like all the news, like on films and stuff like that, and cinema and TV and all that stuff. And I was like a real nut about film way back when I was younger. And I wanted to see every.
Well, you still are though.
Yeah, in a sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm just more jaded, but I wanted to see every foreign film. I wanted to, watch everything that every good director directed. Everything that I heard was good, I'd go out and see it every week. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I mean, it helped that I worked at a movie theater, so I knew all the shit that was coming out at the time. Anyway, but Ichi the Killer, I remember reading blurbs about it on this website called AintItCool.com. And seeing and reading reviews that this film came out in Japan and it's one of the most grotesque films in the world, and I was like, I want to check this out because the way it was sold was like it was some kind of superhero comic book movie, but drenched in violence and gore. And for some reason, I wanted to watch, just kind of like why I wanted to watch Story of Ricky back then. When you just watch these.
That was a great movie.
When you watch over-the-top violent horror, not necessarily slanted horror, but horrible images. And I was like, I gotta see this movie. So it took me a while, but I finally found Ichi the Killer. Like, they made a bootleg version for Hong Kong. So I bought a VCD, which is a CD you just play on your computer. It's basically you play it on your PC. It's not like a DVD.
You thief.
And I paid for it. I guess I technically whoever sold it to me was the thief. So I remember
you enabled the thief.
The first time I don't know if it was the first, maybe it was the second time I watched it, but I remember watching it. And watching it, the Hong Kong version, they cut out a lot of the movie. A lot.
Really?
And I didn't know what was cut out, but I knew just watching it that something was wrong. Because in the film Ichi the Killer, the character Ichi is this like crybaby man boy, right? Like
he's definitely disturbed. He cries all the time.
And he has this pretty neat, it's not superpower, but what is it? A super weapon?
Super boot.
He's a really.
It's kind of like the boot in Mario 3.
He meets up
with a big knife coming out of it.
He meets up with a big, large black woman that gives him some shoes that can kill people. Mm-hmm. No, he has these shoes that once he moves them in a certain way, what was it? Like a razor blade pops out of the back, right? Not necessarily a razor blade, but it's like a very big blade that pops out of the back, and he's able to split people in half, cut people's heads off, arms, stuff like that. And then when I saw the Hong Kong version, I remember watching it, and when he'd kill somebody, the editing, like, you'd only see people like they have over the top gashes where the throat will get cut and they'll just be spurting blood, like cartoonishly almost. Yeah. But it would be like you could tell it was trimmed because the way the movie was edited was very strange. Because they'd be like, and they'll show it for like half a second, and then it'll just go somewhere else. You'll see another reaction. I was like, what's wrong with this movie? Then I realized the Hong Kong version cut a lot out. I mean, when I found the one that I saw, I think was about 117 minutes, and the real director's cut is 2 hours and 9 minutes. So that's easily like almost 85 minutes of just showing the movie and nothing else. And like an hour and a half. And
why would they do that?
I guess.
What are they, American? Come on.
In Hong Kong, they can't show it. So a lot of characters are accused of being Chinese. So maybe the Chinese did not like that at all. So let's start at the film. Ichi the Killer starts out with a pretty What did you think of the soundtrack of the movie? I love the
I
soundtrack.
I liked it a lot.
It's called. I'm looking it up. It says Boredoms. And I used to have it. It's called Boredoms, and it's called Ichi the Killer. OST. Obviously, it's from 2001.
I was actually like, this is separate, but I was really into the costume design and stuff.
Great,
like I
right?
don't normally care that much, but yeah, that guy Kagihara or whatever,
Kakihara,
like
yeah.
he's awesome. Like the way he dresses and everything. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
the soundtrack is done. Just one more thing is Carrera Musication. So if you want to look it up, it's really weird. I wouldn't even know how to classify this music.
Yeah.
It's very strange sounding music, but it's very cool. It's very what is that? It's all instrumental.
It's like weird ambient.
Right, ambient
music.
ambient and noise and scream, not screamo, but kind of weird punk. The whole film has this kind of punk vibe to it. Do you think like that kind of the way it's directed and
It
shot?
kind of had the same feeling as Hobo with a shotgun, a little bit, like a vague version of that.
The way that I look when I was watching this movie again, because I was thinking about it, I was like, this movie feels like if a complete degenerate had made The Dark Knight. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
it's all about like these crime syndicates destroying each other, and there's like this guy in a rubber suit fighting people. It's like a Batman movie, but with like really perverted undertones. So anyway, the whole film starts out with this. I just like the way it started out because you hear this weird song by the Cara Musication, and it's like it sounds like somebody like reverb and a record skipping backwards and stuff and just reversing music. And then you just see this flash of Shinjuku, which is I guess like a city where like all kind of like the lowlives in Japan live in real life. And
Right.
There's a really good book called Tokyo Vice that you guys should check out if you're interested.
Japan seems like a scary place from all these movies.
These movies, especially the people making movies about it. But anyway, so you see that for some reason they focus on the spokes. Is that the spokes of a bicycle, or was that like the chains on the bike? Right. For whatever reason.
I don't remember.
I mean, we're introduced to this group called the Anjo Gang, who they work for this boss. Anju is this, the head Yakuza guy. Yakuza is the mafia of Japan. And
the big boss.
I mean, there's weird camera stuff in this film. I think the director...
There's a lot of weird cuts and stuff. Like go like freeze randomly and then go somewhere else. It's interesting.
Takashi Miike... he does a thing where usually a director, like you think of like Christopher Nolan, like you know how he made Inception?
Yeah.
You know how like he made like Inception and then he won't make another movie until 4 years later? He made like Inception.
No, this guy made like fucking 80 movies or something.
Yeah, right. So I think so far he's only made 60 movies, but in a year he's able to make 6 movies.
And are they all good? I mean, I guess we'll see.
Mostly it's hit or miss, but I think once you like Takashi Miike,
he's like the Frank Zappa of movie directors.
I guess. Was Frank Zappa like a good musician? I can't.
Frank Zappa is awesome, but he made so many albums. Like really, probably like 60 or so.
So was he as good as 311 or?
Yes, and like he's as good as Justin Bieber.
Oh, okay, good.
But like some of his stuff is amazing. Some of it is terrible.
Right.
Like I haven't even heard.
So that might be the Takashi Miike's thing as well. But I for the most part, all of his movies that I've seen, because after I saw this was the first film I saw. I like looked up everything else he did, and I obviously he's done 60 films, and I've probably only scratched maybe 15 or 20 of them watching them. But very eclectic types of film. He just recently made a movie called, I think it was about samurai. Well, it was a movie about samurais that just recently came out that was like really got him awards and everything. So I mean, it was completely straight.
Are they all very violent?
Epic film. That one was. No, he also made a children's movie based on a.
That was the one that I wanted to.
No, not that one. He recently made one called Kid Ninjas. So it was like little kids based on a comic book. But anyway, go back to the Killer. That we were introduced to the Anjo Gang, and for some reason they did the Matrix effect. Remember in the beginning when the guys are talking to each other? Because these guys, instead of watching their boss's back, who's Anjo, he's basically sleeping with a girl. In the comic book, he's sleeping with a 17-year-old girl. And in the movie, they don't necessarily specify. It's just like, he's just with some girl in his room, and all the Yakuza guys are hanging around inside. And they do a Matrix effect where the whole screen freezes and the camera zooms into another guy talking, and it's like for no reason, but it's still like interesting at least. I don't know. Just aesthetically, it's a weird scene that happens. And one of the guys that works for Anjo is this cop. What's the cop's name? Do you remember the?
Is that the one with the kid?
Yeah, I think that is.
I don't remember. The names are really hard on me, but I think
it's Kaneko.
Exactly
Kaneko is the guy. Kaneko
And he
is
was the one with the little kid, like Tagashi.
right.
Or,
Kaneko is a police officer that lost his job on the force because he lost his
he
gun.
lost his gun. Yeah.
So everybody kind of doesn't respect him. So his character kind of, that's another thing in the original cut of the film, is that they completely omit his subplot, because Kaneko they try to build up, because he kind of appears in the beginning a little bit, but then in the second half of the film he's more prominent, because we're kind of led to feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of this guy that in this.
But he's kind of a jerk too. I mean,
he
completely
is,
neglects his kid and shit.
He's an asshole because he's trying to for some reason impress other people and make himself feel important, because his wife left him for another man and he's only got his son, and he doesn't pay attention to his son, and his son gets bullied, and he just feels like shit that he doesn't get.
Shouldn't have lost that gun.
He doesn't get any right. He doesn't get any respect. I actually
no respect.
And he does it with his tie. So there's that. There's another like underling. They what's unknown to them is that another on the other side of town, Gigi is this older man. And here's the thing in the
now this is the thing that was crazy about Gigi. He looks so skinny, and then there's a scene where he takes his clothes off and he's like a fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, that was funny because you could tell it's like they digitally put his head on the body. Because
But that was awesome.
It is. I watched it with my brother-in-law and I was laughing so hard. He was crying hard how hard he was laughing at that scene, because you could tell it's obviously digitized, but it's funny because the whole time we're thinking Gigi's this old man. Gigi, I think, is a nickname for old people anyway in Japan, and he's this guy who just kind of seems unassuming, and he's kind of like a slimy character. And there's this a tough that works for the Anjo gang, and he comes up to him, and then Gigi basically says, Ichi doesn't have to worry about you, you gotta worry about me." And then he just takes off his suit, and he's a big muscular Arnold Schwarzenegger body, including black speedos.
He rips his body apart with his bare hands, and he breaks his neck.
Yeah, he twists his head and twists him into like just all in the wrong direction, kind of like Tales from the Hood with David Alan Grier. Anyway, but Gigi. What the plot in this film is, it's almost like the way they set it up in the movie is different from the comic book. It's funny because the comic book, there's some sequences in the comic book that are horrendous, but they're way more graphic in the comic book than they are in the movie.
I can't imagine. I gotta read this comic book.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like there's parts where Kakihara. Let's just get into the characters first, because Gigi in the movie, apparently he used to be a part of all these gangs. Gang. Used to be there's a group of guys that he works with that work with Ichi, and they used to be part of this underground, Tokyo mafia kind of shit.
And but in the comic, no.
No, in the comic book, I was trying to read all of it back, some more. Apparently, in the comic book, Gigi used to be a police officer. I think he's more benevolent in the comic than he is in the movie, but he's still a piece of shit in the comic book.
Yeah, I mean, he seems to really not like Kakihara specifically, is the vibe I got.
Right. In the comic book, Gigi, the old man, is actually 30 years old and had facial surgery to make him look older and dyeing his hair and stuff like that. That's why he has such a young body. They don't explain that in the movie. And that's why it's probably way more comedic in the film. When people watch it, like, what the fuck's going on? But in the comic book, he was a parole officer for Ichi, because Ichi had killed his parents initially, because he was very disturbed mentally. He killed his parents, and what he did is he was figuring, fuck, man, if I can control this kid to kill all these mafioso guys, I can get him out of this place called the Yakuza Mansion, because that's where all these groups of Yakuzas work inside.
Right.
And in the movie, he's more of a ex-hood that's just kind of trying to get all the money and make these gangs destroy each other. So it's that's the main difference.
And he uses like hypnosis or something.
Right. He does it in both. And in the comic,
how did he meet Ichi?
In the comic book, since he was his parole officer.
Right.
That we can understand. In the movie, it's not really really explained. So I don't know. I don't know how you can just necessarily find a kid like that in the street if you have nothing to do with being an ex-police officer. So maybe he was, and they just don't, they gloss it over. But let's get into Kakihara's character. Who's Kakihara?
Oh, he's the best. He's like this super sadist, masochist guy that I guess he kind of like takes over after the boss Sanjo is killed.
Yeah,
and I guess he's like Anjo's like right hand man or something, or like his tough guy. But he's just like sick. Like he fucking just
he's
will like walk right up to people and
he's
like
definitely
horribly mutilate them.
he's definitely a character. If this character was introduced in an American version of a film, he'd probably be like one of the top characters of all time that people would like, dress up like him on Halloween. Eli Roth dressed up like him for one Halloween thing, which was pretty funny. I thought that was
Cool.
interesting. That's why he put Takashi Miike in Hostel, right? So that was the director, the Japanese guy who says you can spend all your money. That guy. So Kakihara is this blonde-haired guy with he has a Japanese phrase scratched onto his face, and he has a
Oh, is that what that was?
yeah, it's a Japanese phrase, but it ends with his lips are split on the side. So that's when I first saw what's his name? It's called a Chelsea grin. That's when your mouth is split that wide.
That's what the Joker and
right. When I first saw the Joker in the Dark Knight, I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "That looks just like Kakihara," but I mean, it's not necessarily.
And it's awesome. He's smoking, and the smoke is coming out like
yeah, it's a
both
great
sides.
shot. So the whole thing, the whole plot is that Ichi kills their boss Anjo because Gigi set it up. He takes his guys, they clean up the whole site, so they make it look like Anjo ran away with the whole group's money. So that in turn causes infighting between all the gangs. And from there on, Kakihara doesn't believe that Anjo is dead, but he obviously is. So what they're doing is basically trying to weed out every person that is involved.
And avenge him.
Right, because Kakihara apparently had a relationship with the boss where the boss would beat the shit out of him in a sort of sadist, masochistic kind of way. And he loved his boss because of that, because his boss was the only one who was this tough guy who could beat him. And it wasn't like in a gay way, but it was like a person that can show the violence that he loves, because he's a sadist. Is it a sadist or
masochist?
Masochist.
Well, he's both, but yeah, masochist.
He's more masochist than he is sadist.
Right.
He's only sadist because he's fed up with something. He's more masochist, I would say. But this movie is basically the ultimate sadist versus an ultimate masochist. So Kakihara is kind of this, he has this really cool look to him. In the comic book, he has black hair and he's more normal, and they kill him in the comic book for sure. I think he dies in the film. I love the
way he looks in this.
I think he dies in the movie. That's my idea, but in the comic book, he's definitely.
I mean, it's really vague though. Like he gets nailed in the head, then it shows him, and he doesn't have a hole in his head.
I wish I could read an English version of the script to see exactly what it says, because in the movie version, the way Ichi, Ichi doesn't even kill him in the movie version. Basically, the way I interpreted. Well, how did you interpret?
But he does. He kicks him in the head. He falls off a building, and then it shows him like a minute later, and he's fine and like just sleeping or something.
Here's the thing. Note the difference of the color of the screen. Basically, what happens is right before Ichi tries to lean the death blow onto Kakihara, he gets interrupted by the cop Kaneko, who's all this time didn't know that Ichi, who he's helped later, earlier in the film, because he thought it was just a guy down on his luck just like him. Kaneko was upset that Ichi was actually this guy killing off his whole crew. So he shoots Ichi, and Ichi retaliates by slicing his throat. His son Takashi sees this. Is it Takashi his son? I keep forgetting.
I think something like that.
Anyway, his son sees this, and Ichi, because he's got this injury, starts crying and weeping like a giant baby. And at that point, Kakihara realizes that this guy that he's been obsessed with seeing this whole time is not living up to his expectations of being the ultimate sadist. So what he does is he pokes his eardrums out in a really disgusting scene so he doesn't have to hear him cry anymore. And then in his mind, he's playing out the events of Ichi, killing the kid and then fucking him up and throwing him off the top stairwell to his death. That's how I see it, because you can tell it turns really bright, almost like a fantasy in that part.
Okay, maybe. I guess maybe.
And then he falls to his death. And then for some reason, I don't know why Gigi would expect to see the slice on the kid's forehead. On Kakihara's forehead, but at the top of the roof, the kid is still kicking Ichi. I don't know if he could kick Ichi to death. I don't know. But I
don't think a little kid is capable.
Somebody on IMDb was saying that last shot, because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I guess he survived, because I kept going back to the part where he cuts his tongue off graphically in the movie, and I thought maybe he's going to regenerate and become alive, because apparently he cuts his tongue off and it comes back to normal, or it just heals well enough for him to talk. And,
well, it showed it like all like bumpy and scarred.
Right. So at the end, we see him in this kind of dark blue room with chains in it. He's just sitting there, and his mouth falls open. And if it's kind of obvious CG, but it's pretty cool for what it is. So somebody online was like, maybe that's his personal hell now. Like he's stuck there with nobody to beat him. You know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then we see it flash forwards, obviously into the future, because we see Gigi hanging from a tree, and then we see the little boy grown up as an adult, and he turns to the screen, and the movie turns off. That's how I interpret it.
Did they ever make like a sequel or anything to this?
They made a prequel to it.
Okay.
But it's about Ichi in school, and it didn't look interesting enough for me to watch.
Did Takashi Miike direct it?
No, it was another guy. I think he produced it, but it was.
I'd have no interest in.
Yeah, I only saw the last scene. I was just fast forwarding into it because it seemed more like a high school drama with people just beating each other up.
This movie is like not for feminists.
No, not at all. But in the comic book ending, what happens is Ichi does kill Kakihara in a really bad way. Like Kakihara shoves that, those big
needles,
those big needles that he has, he shoves it through his nose, through Ichi's nose, and Ichi, what he does is he splits. He has a suit on. Kakihara has this like nice expensive suit on. Ichi does one of those high kicks that he does, where he lifts his foot up and then drives it down, and it splits his suit straight down. And he has there's this form of bondage in Japan where they tie you up by ropes and suspend you from ceilings and shit like that.
Right.
And I don't know what it's called. And he's
you watch it all the time.
Yeah,
but go on.
Kakihara's wearing it underneath, and it all splits in half, including his dick. His dick cuts in half.
Oh no!
And he's like, "What the fuck?" And then he cuts his arm off too.
Not to bring up this terrible movie, but that movie Faust, whatever.
Yeah, Love of the Damned.
Yeah, there is one or two scenes in there that were like visually awesome, and it kind of reminded me of the same aesthetic in certain parts.
Yeah, what sense?
Well,
just goofy
I'm
gore
trying
and
to,
stuff. Or?
Like the girl that gets all fat and she's like ripping apart and stuff, and then that guy at the end, he turned with the snakes and everything. Remember that?
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, there's a certain aesthetic of that, which was awesome.
I see what you mean. It's some kind of dark, weird, over-the-top violence in the film.
Yeah, cartoony, insane violence. That's the only good thing I could say about that Faust movie. But yeah, this movie fucking nails the violence. It's awesome.
Yeah, in the comic book version, Ichi does kill Kakihara. It's funny how Kakihara dies because in this movie they mostly show crows, really bad CG crow birds. Although you can train crows apparently for movies, well, I don't know why they couldn't. Well, I guess they didn't have the budget. Obviously, all the movie in the blood is all the blood in the movie is digital, but in the comic book, Kakihara jumps from one end of the mansion to the next, thing, and he grabs onto a pole. He's just suspended. He only has one arm, and he's trying to hold himself up. And Ichi gets pissed off because he can't jump that high, so he takes one of his boots and throws it at Kakihara, and it cuts half of his fingers off.
Oh,
so he's only holding on with a ring finger and a pinky finger. Oh, the pointer finger and the pinky finger. And then a bird flying overhead shits on Kakihara's hand and makes him slip and fall to his death. So apparently, and then Gigi is proud that he's gotten everybody killed in that mansion, the mafia guys. And
I would hope that Ichi would eventually kill Gigi because he's bad. He manipulates him.
Well,
and shit.
In the comic book, Gigi gets away with it, and he kind of just does his own thing. He actually starts training the little boy, the son of Kaneko, to start killing people. So he's basically the second Ichi. And then we see Ichi.
Wait, who's the second Ichi?
The son of the cop.
Oh, okay.
He takes him in and trains him to become a killer. Because then you see down the road, you see Ichi. He grew his hair out. Apparently, what the reason why Gigi can control Ichi is because he didn't have any hope or something like that, or he was able to not have dreams or some shit like that. But now living in Shinjuku, you can kind of do all the shit that you want, and living in that town or that city, made him forget about wanting to be a killer. So that's what happened. Then you see Ichi crying. Oh no, Ichi has long hair and he sees the kid running out, and he's like, "What's happening?" And then he bumps into a mafia guy. And the mafia guy is getting in his face, and then he starts crying, so it's symbolizing that he's gonna fucking split this guy's head in half. So
he cries a lot.
Yeah, he cries a lot. So let's get on to Ichi himself. What do you think about him as a character?
He's kind of annoying with the crying.
He's kind of reprehensible too. I was thinking watching, I was like, watching it again, I was like, I was rooting for him because he's kind of like the underdog.
No, he's not a good person.
He's not a good person either. Because
at first you want to think, oh, he's like a Dexter, but right, no, he's not.
He's really the opposite of it.
He's like a
but he's
rapist crybaby.
It's not in a malicious way. That I think it's because he's just at an Arrested Development, right?
Yeah, because he's just insane.
Hey,
that's the name of the show.
I love that joke. I really love that joke. But there's a part in the opening where he's watching this pimp brutalize his girl. I think her name was Sailor. And he's watching her brutalize and rape her, and then he's jerking off. And the funny part is, you notice the way the movie's title is filmed is it's formed with semen, and that's actually semen from the crew, like actual semen used in the beginning of the movie. And so we find Ichi confronts that guy and he splits him in half with his shoe. It's like, and it's very like old school Dead Alive effects, the way the guy gets split in half. But then when he actually like falls apart, it's like really obvious CG, which is pretty funny. Right. Man, you should have seen that in the Hong Kong version. I have that CD here, but it's no good anymore. It's like so bad. It's like a laugh.
It sounds terrible. Why would they do that?
I don't know. Maybe in China they can't watch that. But anyway, they split the guy in half, and then he goes up to the girl and he says, "You know what? I'll beat you up. You know what I mean? I'll continue beating you."
It's like he's saying it like in a nice way. I think she's being like endearing or something.
Right. And the weird thing about, I read another theory today on IMDb that maybe Gigi is actually subconsciously putting his past into Ichi's head. Like maybe he was the one that witnessed the so-called Miss Tachibana, who's this girl who gets raped in Gigi's memories. That's why Gigi got not Gigi in Ichi's head. He got bullied as a kid, and
so he's like taking out his frustration through
right.
Ichi.
And this girl was raped because she tried to help him, and he's forever since that has.
And then he sends that woman Karen, who is Anjo's girlfriend.
Yeah, she was.
So how does Gigi know her?
That's the thing. Maybe he set it up with her a while ago. There's a part where Karen, who's a very attractive girl, played by she's actually a Chinese actress named Pauline Sun, who stopped like making movies. She got married or something like that. She was in the know with Gigi all this time.
Yeah, and that backfired on her.
And apparently he hypnotized her as well. Because in the comic book, it's the same thing. Like, every time Gigi would call...
Well, he said he didn't, though.
But he did. He clearly did. He obviously did. She was having memories of being the girl who got raped.
Well, no, she said she was lying. She said she was lying.
What do you mean?
At one point, when she says all that stuff, rape me, all this stuff, and then when he actually goes to kill her, she's like, I'm not her.
I don't know why she went to go see Ichi himself.
I think Gigi just had her go reinforce his hypnosis by having her pretend.
I think Gigi implanted that memory in her head regardless. So there's that whole part where he's talking to her and she's asking him, why is Ichi doing this? And then there's a flash and it's like of that girl getting raped. And then when Ichi is killing Karen, she has a flashback of getting raped, but the kid who's watching...
I thought that was his flash.
No, and then the kid watching her get raped is not Ichi, but it looks like Gigi when he's younger.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's why, like, when I first saw it, there's parts in this movie where... Like,
this is a movie I'm going to have to rewatch, like, carefully.
There's parts in this movie you're watching, like, I don't get, like, what the hell's going on? Because, like, there's a sequence where Ichi's having an argument with Gigi, and they're in the same room. Mm-hmm. Ichi walks out of the room, and then Gigi walks out of the room that he wasn't in. He walks in, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And there's a part where Karen has a flashback that Ichi's been having this whole time. So for her to have the same flashback that Ichi is obviously made up by Gigi. He has this implanted in their heads. And the guy's face is not Ichi's face. It's assume it's Gigi's face when he was younger. This is stuff that all confused me, but going online made sense. So that's why the whole thing, the kid online, IMDb, I forget his name.
Okay, then I don't feel so bad about being so confused.
Yeah, his theory is that all the shit that happened with with Gigi, is he's putting into Ichi's head to kind of fight all these bad guys, and Ichi himself, who was like a hardcore karate student, so that's why he has like a natural gift to kick the shit out of people. There's like stuff like MMA, if you've ever seen this guy who tries to kick another guy's leg and his leg breaks kicking the other guy's foot. It's like really horrendous looking. His leg like turns into jello. And then maybe that's why Gigi built himself up to be all muscular and violent too. It's a very weird film. But
yeah, but Gigi's kind of a puss because he's so big and strong. He rip guys' heads off. Why doesn't he just fucking do it himself? Stop making this poor guy do it.
I don't know. Maybe that's just
I feel bad for Ichi because he's like so screwed up and like messed up, but at the same time he's like a bad person. But this guy's like totally milking it, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. He's being the mastermind of the whole thing.
Yeah, but he has no reason to. He could do it himself. He just doesn't want to.
Yeah, I guess maybe he's just trying to play it like a chess game. Like he wants to show that he's smarter than everybody else. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's the only way I can look at it. So what did you think about the violence in the film?
Oh, it was great. There was a scene. Oh, it was like beautiful. There was a scene where there's like a face sliding down a fucking wall.
Ichi is dispatched to go kill a number of the Anjo gang because the Anjo Kakehara's been fucking around so much that they kick him out of the syndicate, so he decides to form his own gang, but still named after his old boss. And Ichi is sent out to run into a room and just kill everybody in there. And there's like all this gore and violence. You don't even see it. A lot of the violence in the film, strangely enough.
And that guy with the dog ears, the twin brothers.
Yeah.
I love that scene where he's like, "Oh, my brother just died." Like he doesn't even care.
Yeah, in the comic book, they're really worse for some reason. They're really worse.
I like them.
They graphically.
I didn't understand why they were beating that girl.
I don't know either. I mean, it's a very hard movie to watch.
There was a scene where they were just like beating this girl trying to get some information, but I didn't really get it.
Inoue, I think it was not Inoue. It was a guy who got killed early. The guy who got thrown into the TV set with the spikes in his face.
Yeah.
The other guy was this guy who had a relationship with this hooker called Mio Mio. He was like a Chinese pimp, and they were trying to find him, so they were beating her up to find him.
But that was unrelated to Ichi.
No, they were trying to find her to find him to find Ichi.
Oh, I see.
So they found her. They didn't find him. They beat the shit out of her. Then it was a really horrible scene where they pull her nipples and slice.
Oh God, yeah, no, I couldn't. I had to actually.
And it has that whole.
Actually looked away at one point.
It has a sound effect like the scratching down like a chalkboard kind of sound.
I never look away in movies.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And then her pimp, / her boyfriend, he gets his arm ripped off. In the comic book, he gets his dick split in half and everything like that too.
Yeah, I gotta read this. So this comic book, it's like 24 issues, 2 years. You said?
It's not 24 issues. It's about like it's about 110 chapters. So 110 chapters is about 30 pages each. So you do the math on that. But it's very much worth a read. The comic book is horrendously violent. I mean, it's really bad.
And the movie, and Faust does too, you said.
Right, yeah. Faust is a completely different. Faust is almost 20 times worse than Ichi the Killer in the comic book wise. But the Ichi the Killer movie, it's funny because the violence is mostly implied because you see mostly the aftermath, but it's still like you almost saw it actually happen. You know what I mean?
You see some nice stuff.
You do see some good stuff.
I don't care about a lot of the violence, like the after effects, seeing some guts on the floor. That doesn't mean anything to me. But when you see a face sliding down a wall, that's fucking awesome.
Pretty bad. It's funny because the difference is like between this and say Story of Ricky, where you actually see Ricky when he punches somebody and they fly apart, as opposed to Ichi just running into a room and you see the violence flying out of the door.
Yeah, that was a great scene actually when it just showed the door and all this blood shooting out of it.
Guys
and body
flying out of the room and shit like that.
That was great.
Yeah, there's these two cops in the movie that are obviously really corrupt. And I guess they're the inside word for Kakehara and the Anjo gang. And,
well, he said he was going to get the cops to help him, so they probably control the cops.
In the comic book, they're disgusting. I mean, they're really bad. They're different in the comic book because they're big hulking guys, and one of them has dreadlocks. But
also, the guy with the dog ears, did he actually smell the girl's vagina and know that she was with the guy based on the smell?
Yes. I mean, it's
because there was a point where Kakehara tasted a dollar bill and knew that it was the blood of his boss on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
So it's like semi-supernatural.
There's a lot of weird elements in this film that I think, Japan, you know what I mean? Okay.
It's
like one of those things.
Well, at least the meaning wasn't love at the end.
What'd you think about the way that it was filmed and how it was like the aesthetic of the film itself?
I mostly liked it. There were points where it was like almost seemed like it could be a glitch, but like it wasn't. But no, it was really well done. But I was more into like the artistic design of everything than necessarily the editing or something. The editing was cool, but it wasn't exactly my thing.
the movie definitely has with especially with the characters' outfits. Because I remember finding this wallpaper or this image of all the main actors in their suits. So
Right.
it's Ichi with.
Ichi's actually my least favorite costume.
Yeah, his costume. He has this kind of like super stuntman costume with a big number one. It looks like a turtle shell on him.
Yeah.
But in the poster, it's like him wearing a giant hood because there's a scene where he's walking around in a hood, which is pretty neat. But he's too much of a weirdo to appreciate that he's cool looking. And then there's Kakihara, there's Karen, there's Kaneko, and there's other ancillary characters that are there. And it's such a cool image because you look at it and you're like, man, they look like they came out of kind of like a like not like what's the type of science fiction, the American cyberpunk kind of look. They all kind of have this cyberpunk look,
like
even though it's not
steampunk or something.
More cyberpunk because it's like Blade Runner. Like you'd expect these characters to walk out of Blade Runner or something, but not that they're futuristic. They just kind of have that look to them.
No, they look cool.
Everybody looks cool in this movie. Everybody looks cool. Maybe the cops don't look that cool because they have these weird denim suits on.
Well, they're cops.
They have cat ears or the dog ears. Excuse me. But other than that, I think I love this movie. Like, and watching it again, I was like, man, this movie is great. It has this whole punk aesthetic, the way it's shot.
Yeah, I'm excited for this month because I have not seen really anything of this guy's except Imprint is like the only clear one I've seen.
Yeah, he's got a lot of bizarre films and a lot of interesting stuff that he does with his movie. And at least he tries to do something different, and I'm very happy.
And I found it really funny. I was reading about him, or we could save that part for another thing about him as a person. But yeah, he wants to be like a racer or something, like a.
Really?
Yeah, I was reading this whole thing. He doesn't even care about being a director. He's like talking about how like anyone could be a director, blah blah blah. Like he's passionate about like something completely unrelated to movie directing.
Yeah, he probably treats it as a job, but hell, man, if this is a
job
to
whatever,
him,
he's good at it.
He's good at it, but in the long run, I definitely say watch this film. This is like if you watch any Takashi Miike movie first, you can watch this or Edition, which is we're gonna do later.
What's your rating?
My rating, I'm sorry, but I gotta give it a 10 out of 10. I gotta give it 10 out of 10. CGI crows plucking tongues out of children's hands.
Okay.
Although I don't know how that kid got that tongue in. Also, you know the guy that they dropped the boiling liquid on? In the comic book, he gets killed. So in the movie, they kind of don't go back to him because he.
I like that he doesn't die.
They do a whole thing where Gigi approaches him and he hires Gigi to kill Kakihara. So he gives him the funding to kind of get this shit going on. In the comic book, he's dead. One of the twins killed him. But anyway, what's your rating on this?
I'm gonna give this 9 out of 10. Beautiful faces sliding down the wall.
So if that's it, check out the comic, check out the film. It's not for the squeamish. It really isn't. If you're a woman and you're very offended by what stuff happens,
that's the part that's the most offensive.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens to guys. More men die than women in this film.
The violence didn't bother me at all because I don't get bothered by cartoony violence, but
there's definitely the violence that happens towards the women here is very explicit. There's like rape and body torture and stuff, and it's not promoting. It's just showing you how grotesque these fucking bad guys are.
People are like.
There's nobody that's good in this film, really. But other than that, Danny, what's the final word?
Shantami Quantua.
The horror deconstruction.